what do you think school is for? Because if we're not asking the question, it's really unlikely that school is going to change. Because right now, what school is for is satisfying the status quo.
Mm.
That is, it has a optimized bureaucracy for persistence. And what's really interesting, during the pandemic, pre-vaccine, people couldn't go to class. So what happened? Well, people, quote, went to school from home, but they didn't. Data shows that the typical kid went to school for 20 minutes or 30 minutes a day. I've been working on optimizing for online learning for more than 5 years. Not one educational institution called me up and said, how are we going to do this? And most of the ones that have substance said, we'll come up with something that's passable. And the minute this is over, we're going back to normal because they're optimized for that. And there's no reason at all to believe that education in 2021, when almost everybody has a smartphone, should be like education was in 1921, when all of that was impossible. But it still is. And so we have this huge technical and technological advance, and people aren't asking the simple question. So to answer your question, I need you and your friends and your colleagues to just keep asking the question until someone decides to answer it.
What is school for? And I wonder if some of the, I think there are more schools. I live in Atlanta. There are more schools popping up around here that are project-based, which I think are really, really great step in the right direction. But they're hard to find and they're expensive. And I wish there was a way to standardize that or even operationalize it in a way that makes it more accessible. And I wish I knew how to do that.
Yeah, check out the Acton Academy. I am not affiliated, but I know the people behind it, ACTON. And their numbers and their output is hard to believe, but extraordinary.
Yeah.
And in the typical school, they've got 40 or 50 kids and only 2 adults, counting the custodial staff.
What?
Yeah. And
amazing.
If you're in first grade, there's going to be a 5th grader helping you. And every single day you get to the building and they say, what's your project? And you go do your project and you help other people with their project. And the outcomes are off the charts. And it's not based on the ethnicity or income level of people who are coming. It's because kids really want to learn. Kids do not want to be educated. And they're totally different things.
You're right. And it seems like such a fresh and modern and obvious approach, but so hard to kind of disrupt the status quo with that. And, one thing I'm curious about is, we are hardwired to fit in. We are hardwired to be in the social constructs. And, I think about my son. My son is 7. I'm in his room. I'm surrounded by Legos right now. And he desperately feels like he needs to feel like he belongs, but he's a different child. He doesn't like sports. He's kind of more thoughtful. He's more reserved, and he is who he is, but he's a little bit of a mess until he finds where he belongs. And right now he rejects what he doesn't really feel serves him, which is good. But I'm wondering, how can I help mold him? And even, from a podcast perspective or even, thought leadership of how do we are hardwired to fit in. At what point do you veer off the path of convention and say, I think there's something better?
Right. So there is no doubt that almost every human is hardwired to fit in. That's not the question. The question is, fit in with who? Mm-hmm. And in an industrialized culture, what you wanted to do in 1955 is fit in with the football team, the cheerleaders, and the rich kids. There is a curve. The center of the curve is the place you have to be, because that's how you're going to get picked for the dodgeball team. It's how you're not going to get beaten up. And it's how you're going to get a job at the local factory doing what you're told for 45 years until you get to retire. And so there was significant pressure from a paternalist industrial system to fit in to the dominant narrative. But now there's a nerd table, and now there's the creators table, and now there's, the lunchroom has lots of places where you can fit in. And it turns out economically that the kids who are optimizing to fit in the center are really struggling because there just aren't those jobs for them and those careers for them where your primary attraction is that you fit in at the popular kids table. And I wrote about this in We Are All Weird, that when the long tail kicks in and when people have choices, you know what they do? They make choices. And as a parent, finding, because a 7-year-old has trouble doing this on their own, finding your kid a circle makes all the difference in the world. Because now they've undone the shame that society has put on them, which is they're never going to be at the dodgeball table. Fine. This table is where I want to be anyway. And parents who can affirm and support kids who don't fit the dominant narrative are doing really important work. And it's really hard to do. Like if you have a kid who's 8 or 9 who's wetting their bed, it's really hard for the parent. And if the parent exposes how hard it is for them, now it's when it becomes hard for the kid, right? And it turns out when the kid's 11, there's no problem unless they've been carrying on 4 years of shame. And so what we've got to figure out how to do is say, if you're not hurting anybody, and if you are pushing yourself to be the version of yourself you want to be, I've got your back. And to have someone have your back is so important.